Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. I'm Bill Corell, and I'm here with my podcast buddy, Jan Jermias. And every week we kind of chase the conversation around and describe and try to find ways to access empowerment. Now, what that really means is that if you have an experience where time seems to go by very slowly and you're suffering, or there's something that's really intense in your life that's going on. I guess what Albert Einstein said, that the theory of relativity is, if you want to look at time, putting your hand on a hot stove for 10 seconds is an eternity. But being in love with somebody and being in an embrace for hours goes by in a second. So I think really where we're at is we want you to be more in the experience of being in an embrace where time passes, and all of a sudden you notice, gee, mini Christmas, it's been a couple of hours and I've just been having the most fun and really enjoying myself. So as time goes on, and the more of these podcasts we've done, because we're over 200 at this point, which I think is kind of neat. It's a commitment on our part, to get out there as frequently as we can, to give you more spontaneous, off the cuff, that we are talking in terms of our life's experiences and less from a textbook, if you will. And as a result of that, we also get to share experiences in our own lives and with each other. And when Jan and I get together, we never know where it's going to go. And I think we like that. It's a little bit like diving out of an airplane and then figuring out how to put your parachute on,
Absolutely. And I love what you shared, because you said something that I just wrote, actually. And maybe I was talking about, I went to yoga class to teach on Saturday. And I guess the thing I was thinking about was, what is wisdom? Was my question. And I opened it up. Like, sometimes I talk, but it was actually asking my students to let me, to give me, to tell me what they thought wisdom was. And so I then wrote about what everybody had said. And I said that we agreed that wisdom is not simply about gathering information. Knowledge can be learned from books, courses, and study, but wisdom comes from truly observing life, paying attention to the world around us, and noticing the lessons that emerge in everyday moments. Wisdom comes with awareness. It's the blend of what we know, what we feel in our hearts, and the quiet guidance of intuition. It's shaped by the way we meet life's experiences and by our willingness to stay open, especially when the path is uncertain. Wisdom often grows with age, not just because time passes, but because we engage with life's joys and challenges with curiosity and compassion. It invites us to listen deeply, to see from many perspectives, and to live with grace even when the answers aren't clear.
Yeah.
And, as you were just talking, I was like, oh, Bill's talking about wisdom. So, and
yeah. Yeah, wisdom, gives you the distinctions and distinguishing between experiences and different outcomes that all seem like they should be similar.
Right. And, it's so funny, because then all of a sudden I was thinking about just now the fact that you meet children who are like very wise. Like they have a wisdom about them.
Right.
Some people might say they have an old soul. Like I think that's an expression. I was always told I had an old soul. And I think that that's where this idea of like past lives and all these other things come into, whether you like whether people believe in that or not. But I think that that's where that kind of comes about, because all of a sudden you meet someone like a young person
Yep.
who has a perspective where you think to yourself, like, this is far beyond like a normal child's grasp of the world kind of thing.
Yep.
And so, as we're talking, and my friend's son, I always felt was a very old soul. Like, and, it's just so interesting to me that you do meet people, and it's sort of like independent of age at times, who just have a wisdom about them that is far beyond their years. And then you meet people who are much older who basically don't have any wisdom at all. But we won't go there.
Oh, we could. I mean, it's always useful, to give examples, and the word distinction is very, very powerful. It's the lever between having a fact and having a useful bit of knowledge. And I think most people will agree that knowledge and wisdom being as different as they are, knowledge is being able to access something that is, that people have, as you said, kind of archived an experience. However, your reading of what they used in the language doesn't give you the feeling, it doesn't give you the smell, the taste, the sensory memory of what actually happened. Where wisdom, it's kind of like there's this hair's breadth between wisdom and intuition. I think they come from the same source. However, wisdom has the experience in this lifetime, where intuition might be an experience from another being. Okay.
Mhm.
And both of them are very powerful. And if you ever have that feeling that you've been someplace and you've been here before or been in this conversation before, um, it's quite possibly have been. And when you have that kind of a sensory relationship to a set of circumstances, it should also give you a little bit more confidence. It should allow you to behave and act in a way where there's a little bit more certainty of what your next step might be, or a range of next steps that might present themselves, as opposed to an automatic response, a knee-jerk reflex reaction. So, and the need to operate from fight or flight, as opposed to an intuitive reaction to something, having processed all the information and allowing your gut to be the guide in terms of what you do next. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that I liked what you shared about intuition. I'm not I think of intuition as being, I don't know, something that not necessarily is much more a felt experience versus, and I mean felt in that literally you feel it. Like, to me, I feel it in my body, I feel it in my chest. I'm like, something about it is just physiologically, like I get physical sensations that this is right.
Yep.
And I've had experiences like that where where that's what happened. And I've had experiences where I haven't listened to my intuition, my gut, and what's happened in regard to that. And there is something, though, very physiological and very sensory about it, versus I feel like when you get, like, especially, and don't get me wrong, I'm like such a huge bookworm, and I love learning and everything. And I get great joy from that. But there's something about experiential wisdom which has it's like a richness to
Yeah.
it, a depth, which, and maybe like you said, it's because it's applied knowledge. when I can sit there and take something I've learned and incorporate it into something I'm doing or something I'm helping my client with, then all of a sudden there's a richness to it. It's not just a fact on a page. I'm actually using it to improve someone else's life or well-being. So um there's an there's an application or apply. Yeah, I wanted to say appliedness, but that's just so not proper
Why
English.
not? I mean, I think that's a valid use of that that term. If you think about it and kind of compare it to an instruction manual, there are instruction manuals that only have diagrams and pictures. And then there are more definitive instruction manuals that have diagrams, pictures, and subtexts below the pictures. And then there are instruction manuals that have all that, and then it also has steps in terms of what to do to execute the outcomes that are depicted. And I think thinking in terms of my own experience and then other people who I do consider to be very, very intuitive type people, that there are folks that don't just get a feeling, it actually comes in language, whether it's language that the body is set up to interpret, or if it's language in terms of English or French or Spanish or something like that. There are some times when a feeling comes to you and it's using all 6 or 7 of your senses, right?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because on Saturday, I went to a meeting. And so I had been talking to everybody about wisdom, my students about wisdom. And then we went, and Mary Jane and I had just come off our Friday audio event. And the title was From Ashes to Wings. And in the presentation, the guy used the word ashes, and then all these different things. So all of a sudden, it's like he must have repeated like a whole bunch of words that we had said and that I had actually just spoken about in the morning. And I thought to myself, it's that kind of reinforcement. And all of a sudden, out of like all quotes he could have quoted, like he quoted one that was so applicable that used the word ashes. He wasn't there,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Mary Jane and I are messaging each other on the chat because we're both on the same Zoom, and we're like, did you notice what words he's using? And I said, yes, I did. And so then, first of all, I think it's this huge affirmation from like the universe or God or whatever you believe, that you're on the right track.
Right.
That something like what you're speaking is resonating on a deeper level, on some sort of level, which we may, which possibly we can't fathom even. And so it's always interesting when, of all things, you get sort of what I call like confirmation from whatever you believe, the universe, God, whatever. You're like, okay, this is good. This is right.
Yeah. And the interesting part of that is that it's resonance with you, and it's seeming of confirming or denying an important question that you've got in your body, may or may not be to your best benefit. Okay. And I think the neat part of it is that all this information really still does have to be understood, sorted out, and then responded to appropriately by you. It's not enough to get validation from the universe, because the universe validates wrong information all the time. Just take my word for it. That's why so many people continue to do really stupid things with their lives, in spite of the fact that everybody else knows that it's not good for them. They might be receiving different feedback in terms of what their goals and ambitions are in terms of their own personal path, if you will. So what's really nice about it is that if it's a confirmation for something that calms you, a confirmation that allows you to know that this too will pass, or that, darn it, this is kind of how I get to feel every time I'm on the verge of really growing very quickly, you know? And unfortunately, you and I are not really all that excited about growing and changing anymore. You know, we hit a certain part of our life's path and we go, okay, cool. So we got most of the topsy-turviness done. And then we find out, no, I don't think that's right after all.
No,
Or you make a declaration and you say, I feel like I finally arrived. And then the universe says, oh, really?
really, right. No,
We'll see about that.
right. But I think that that's, you know, and I'm not saying this in a sort of nonchalant way, but I was reading something the other day. Oh, it was actually quite funny in a way, because it says, it was like, if you think you know who you are, or you get to a point where you think you know yourself, like you know who you are, then something happens and all of a sudden you question who you are.
Right.
And that happens over and over and over again. And I think you and I have both, you know, we've spoken about loss of people, loss of pets. And all of a sudden you think you know who you are, and all of a sudden you question who you are. And I don't think it's only like loss. I mean, I think it's all different types. You lose a job and all of a sudden who you thought you were, let's say your identity is questioned. If you lose someone else, or, you know, a parent, a spouse, a sibling, you know, all of a sudden you're like, you know, a child, all of a sudden this whole idea of like, what am I? Like, who am I without this person, without this? And so I think that kind of sort of thing, like having everything figured out, that's what life does. We're constantly questioning about like who we are, because, you know, I think about it, you know, I have a really close friend, and I remember when she lost this, like, probably one of her best friends, how devastated she was. She, like, and I, you know, and I've had different situations where I've lost people and you've lost people, or
Yes.
all of a sudden you have a major shift. I mean, I saw it when my father lost his job, you know, same thing. You know, this whole question about who was he without this profession. And so I think that we go through that throughout our lives. Like, it doesn't end, because we constantly, you know, we lose people, people come into our lives, they leave our lives, life changes, and that's sometimes to our doing, and sometimes, you know, there's nothing. I mean, we're affected by what happened, but we aren't directly responsible for what happened.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like sometimes the only thing that is constant is the change.
There's the change, exactly. I remember
And
years.
funny enough, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I remember years ago I got on a dating website, and the guy that I connected with or whatever said, I know everything there is to know about myself. And I thought to myself, like, that was like, it was like, that person's not for me, because I have no idea who I am. You know, like, you know, I just, even at that time, and I wasn't on the same, let's say, spiritual path as I am now,
Right.
I thought to myself, wow, you know, if you think you know everything about yourself, you know, it was just such a funny thing. And I still remember it, because I remember, like, delete.
Beautiful dreamer, right? I think somebody who thinks they know everything about themselves is not giving themselves much room to grow.
That's right. Exactly how I felt.
There's knowing yourself, and then there's fooling yourself into thinking you know yourself.
That's right.
I don't know if your attention is on that, what's not getting taken care of in your life?
Yeah. There has to be. I mean, I look at it as like, what's missing?
Yes. Yeah, it's I have something to share with you. What's really kind of cool is while we're having this conversation, um, I'm getting text messages from my number two daughter,
Oh,
who at the age of she just turned 45. Um, she got her accounting degree, a bachelor's degree in accounting, and so she sent us a copy of her diploma,
uh huh.
and it's summa cum laude, which means that she worked her tail off and she
Right.
managed to get into a very elite percentage of all the people in her class or all the people that have ever gone for a degree. And that my initial reaction was to think, well, of course, that's who you are. Those are the kinds of things you do with your life. You know what I mean? And then I thought to myself, no, it's beyond that. This is every day, every time she did something for years. This is what that little two words means, that you behaved with excellence in everything that you took up with regard to accomplishing this every time it was called for. And you succeeded in doing that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's like we always say, and I really believe this to be true. And I think that I would have a hard time um working through some of the like the dramatic changes I've had to like the pivots I've had to make through the years is not to realize that every single thing that happened added to who I was. Like
Right.
somehow, we look at it as like, oh, I finished this degree, those 4 years, or I finished this project or this book, you know, but really it's a summation of so much. It's basically a summation of all the time that went before.
Right.
And so when you talk about that, I think about your daughter, who it's not only those years maybe that she spent, it's all the other time, which, you know, and doing things even that maybe you might not even think of that are applicable to accounting, for example.
Yeah.
Because some of those qualities, or let's say every quality, contributes to everything else, and so person stands up in front of a room, and basically it's the sum of all their experience.
That's right. That's who's presenting themselves every time you see them.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
An interesting thing to noodle is the folks who talk about if onlys, the if this hadn't happened and that hadn't happened. And from my perspective, I absolutely love all my failures. Love my successes too. But my failures, I think, were the things that were the most directional changing in my life. The things that I failed and I chose not to go back and correct, that's there. But the things that I failed and I went back, and not only did I correct it, but I went so far beyond that it's not even worth talking about them as a failure. And then the other things is, the part of the world that I'm in right now is totally dictated by all of the sum of all of those experiences, the works and the didn't works. You know what I mean?
I mean, I
So
think, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Bill. Go ahead. I want you to finish.
that's okay. I'm kind of like doing a run on thought here, but the point is that it's true for all of us. Whatever you've got in your life that you like, that is good. It's what you intended. Good on you. But you had to do all those failures too in order to get here.
Absolutely. I mean, I've thought a lot of late. I came to a point probably about 6 months to a year ago, and I kind of reflected back on certain decisions I had made and whether I'd made and whether or certain choices I'd made, and whether I had made the right one. And I look at them and I think, yeah, I could have made those choices, but actually, really, I couldn't,
Right.
because the person I either am now or I was at that time was not able to make that, for whatever reason, was not able to make that choice.
Yes.
And sometimes, I think we have to remember to do that. We look back or look at a time and we have all the wisdom. If we talk about wisdom, all the hopefully wisdom, experience, the knowledge that we have now. But at the time that we made that choice, we didn't have all that. And some of the choices I'm reflecting back on aren't even, like work choices. I mean, they were personal choices.
Right.
And I look back and I think to myself, should I have done this differently? And I think to myself, I really couldn't. Because basically, if I talk about who I am, that wasn't who I was. And that isn't who I am now. Part of me, in a way, and sometimes I have to sit there and say, you know, in some ways, do I wish I was different, kind of thing?
Yes.
I mean, or were able to do those things, but that wasn't in the cards for me. That wasn't, the person I am, the creation that I am. That wasn't me. So it's like asking me to be someone else, which is impossible.
Right. That's kind of a healthy way to look at que sera, sera. What will be, will be. It's so important to us to have this feeling that we have some semblance of control. But nothing could be further from the truth. And most of the upset in our life is caused by the difference between how much control we think we ought to have and how much control it seems like to us that we actually do have. And when we're enjoying life and not really worrying about things too much, our focus is not on that at all. We're too busy, having great lives to worry about whether or not we're in control. It's such a small conversation for somebody who is got their nose against the grindstone and producing on a daily basis at the level that they know they can produce.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very interesting how, we talk about knowing ourselves. And I don't know that we a lot. I mean, and I've gone through, obviously, because I debate, I was going through this like 6, 7 months ago, a year ago. This feeling of like, did we make the right choices? And, and I was reading the other day, it was basically like, there is no choice that's basically the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And if you make a choice, what you're basically, if you don't know what to do and you make a choice, you make that choice the right choice.
So go back over that again, because that's a really, really great way to say what you said.
Well, it says if you make a choice, like if you have a choice to do one or two things and you do one, and maybe, who knows whether it was the right, but you make the, and you don't know what to do. You're like, okay, I've looked into it, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm going to do column B. I'm going to do that. And even if it's not the best choice or the right choice, you just make it into the right choice.
Yes.
And I loved that. I was like, okay, because I think that takes off a little bit of the stress of like, oh my gosh, is this the right thing to do or should I do that? Should I do that or should I do that? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, you just look at it and you say, okay, if that's the choice, I made it. Now that's the right choice and I make it right. I make it work somehow.
Yeah, and if you think about it, just having that notion that no matter what you did, it was perfect and right for the time. Now you can do what's perfect and right for this time.
That's right.
Why waste any time going back and beating yourself up over what didn't work out? You did something and something happened. And that's what life's all about, is now doing the next thing. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
If
Then
you
you do
didn't get what you want, you're just not done yet. So keep going and stop complaining. That's funny.
Yeah, but I read it and I was like, oh gosh. And yeah, I read it. And then also a few people, I've heard it in a few different places of late. And I thought, okay, that makes so much sense to me.
Yes. Yeah. About sense. We have a very structured way of viewing what makes sense to us, don't we? It's all
Hmm.
it's all contextual. It's all like there's parameters of it making sense and not making sense. As humans, that's what we do. That's how we survive till tomorrow. Is we do things that we're highly confident are going to work out, and we avoid doing things that we're pretty sure are not going to work out.
Hmm.
However, that said, why does it seem like there's so damn many things that we're avoiding that we're not sure are going to work out, that are the most important things for us to address in our lives? Doesn't it seem that way sometimes?
Absolutely. I mean, I come across it all the time. And I think we've all been there. I think, I was listening to something about change and change in the unknown. So basically, like you said, we know things are going to change, but the fear of change and the fear of the unknown
Right.
and why it is so scary to us that we are willing to stay in a place which might be horrible, stressful, you know, could be a relationship, it could be a job, multi choose your scenario. Like we will stay stuck and in a horrible place
Right.
rather than venturing out because it's different. Because it doesn't look at what we feel is like what we're used to or normal, even if that normal is bad. And I meet people every day who are in that boat, who don't like, they'd rather stay stuck where they are than move forward. Because basically it's like when you're in a bad situation, it's bad. It's bad. It's like, you might be in a whatever, and that fear of it being, of changing it and shifting it is so like overwhelming
Right.
that people will stay there.
Yeah. The no matter how awful things are, it's possible to make it worse.
That's right, exactly. I was gonna say, well, at least I know how bad it is here, but I think we forget that it also might be better. Guilty, like I mean, I've been there. I think we've all
Oh,
been
yeah.
there. Like we think we forget that yes, it might be worse, but also it might be better.
So there's this thing called intentionality, which I think pretty much makes all the difference in the world. When you intend to accomplish something, it's not an expectation, it's not a desire, but it is having the will behind your actions to be cause in the matter. And when you're talking about your own life, there's no one to delegate that to. There is no one on this planet that really gives a good rap whether you're here or not. Okay. They're going to miss you. Yeah, absolutely. Like we miss all of the people that are not here anymore. However, we're continuing to go on. So if you think about it in terms of who would be a better champion for you than you, how many of us actually regard ourselves that way? Like the person we can most trust in the matter of how our life turns out, what percentage of it we get to experience as good or as fulfilling or as reasonable or any way you want it to turn out. It's kind of a neat thing if you consider empowerment is not a place to go and get. Empowerment is a place to generate from.
I mean, it just reminds me, of like basically, the whole idea, like from ancient, from Rumi to others to Mary Oliver, is just, this whole idea of being a friend to yourself. And personally, the whole idea of like, people, I go to lectures and people say, love yourself. I'm always like, feel like I'm going to be in the back of the room, like gagging. Like something about that phrase just doesn't
Yeah.
resonate with me. But I can think of being a friend to myself, and I think that when you talk about like literally basically having your own back, there is this experience of like, really well, but partly because no one else totally, as much as we try to get close to people and we are friends with them and we love them, we don't totally understand them because we're not them. And so the whole idea of, just being there for yourself is really like about that to me, about acceptance of who you are and all your, whatever in the tapestry or the like buffet of all that you are, and just being there for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all thoughts that you're going to have to be reminded of. It's not a natural consideration for most human beings unless they're highly trained and have finally received the message from the great beyond that, frankly, there is no one else. Some of these things that you're waiting for a knight in shining armor on a white horse, to come over the horizon and take care of your busy work. Good luck with that.
You just burst my bubble, Bill. Really? I've been waiting.
I know. It's in every song. I've been waiting for a girl like you,
Yes, absolutely. Um, but it's so interesting how, if you think about it, and every book, all the movies, all the books, where that's kind of the attitude. We have very few movies or books or whatever. I mean, let's say novels or whatever, where people actually go out and they talk about, like, I don't know, like what we're talking about. Like, I think people do, and maybe it's different now, but I still think that, when we grew up, it was still very much the philosophy of like, you're going to have someone come and take care of you.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe I'm aging myself by saying that.
Well, whether you are or you aren't, it communicates.
Right. True. Thank you. But it really is interesting. And I think it's the whole idea of what you were talking about, is that no one is indispensable.
Yeah,
That we like to think we are. I mean, not to say that we all are unique. I mean, I do believe that.
there's no dispute. There is absolutely no dispute that every last one of the human beings that's ever lived before, and all of the human beings alive today, each one is different. Let's just say that there were 50 clones. Let's say we're not talking humans anymore. You can't possibly synchronize their thinking. Can't possibly synchronize their actions unless they're all being controlled by an external force that's making them do the same thing at the same time. And even that, they are different because they take up different locations of space in the universe. Still unique. So if you're happy with something as broad as that, to just kind of like say, all right, there are ways that other people do things that have been successful for them. There are ways that I have done things that have been successful for me. How I choose to handle the next thing that I need to do, I'm coming back to my word, intentionality. Let's just play the game as if you want to win. And when you put that will to survive, that will to thrive, that will to get ahead, to accomplish, to achieve, and if you bring that with you every day of your life, maybe somebody's going to put a little summa cum laude on your certificate. That's kind of like, the universe stroking you and saying, you did good, kid. Now get back out there and get back at it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, when I contributed to the book and I wrote the opening chapter, and it was probably, I mean, thus far, probably the best writing I've ever done. And I sat there when and that was the conglomerate of all the years that I've been searching and soul searching and writing on my own and reading and, digesting, like we talk about processing and digesting wisdom or information and all that. And that came out in that thing. And then now I'm working on another book. So that's why I said thus far, because in some ways, part of me hesitated because I thought to myself, that was so beautiful. And I did was such a heartfelt or whatever. I don't know if I can measure up to that.
Yeah.
But then I'm still growing and still learning.
You still are.
And so it'll be different. It won't be the same. But it was just such a all of a sudden I thought, oh gosh, I gotta do this again, But it'll be different. I'm not comparing it to that. It's a new book. So yeah.
I love it. I think this would be a really good time to stick in our thumb and pull out a plum, and then maybe summarize today's message for our beautiful, lovely listeners out there, and for each other.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I would share with everybody as a kind of a gem. I mean, I really believe, like we said, each person is unique.
Yes.
And we each come with so much richness. Like and that's why I look at our conversations and other things that I'm part of and realize that one is they could never be recreated again. Like this is because we come into the conversation next time and we're different.
Right.
And I feel like, look at yourself like that. Look at yourself as one is, like you said, intentionality. So get up in the morning, maybe ask yourself, how do I want to show up today? Who do I want to be today? And then, today I would like to be fill in the blank. But I think there's something about that, like you said, that word intentionality. It's like, maybe some days you're like, I just want to show up as a placeholder because I'm really tired today, like I just want to stay where I am. Like, I want to be who I am. And I'm like, okay, just want to pause for today because I'm feeling whatever. And then next day you take yourself off pause and you say, okay, who would I like to be today? Different day. Who would I like to be today?
Right. I think that's a really good place for us to wrap everything up. I think with that in mind, my friend, I appreciate your generosity in sharing yourself with both me and our community. And I especially appreciate you being so free with your experience and wisdom. And it generally just is like, that's what Jan does. However, your average day of sharing yourself is an extraordinary experience for me personally.
Oh, thank you.
And I don't take that lightly at all. I think that it's one of the neatest things going on in my life right now, among a long list of neat things going on in my life right now. I think with that said, I will ask all of you to do the following. Particularly now, and we're recording this on August 11th, 2025. There are people in your life that are struggling right now and you don't know it. Reach out to someone, reach out to more than someone, reach out to the people that you really love and let them know that you care and that no matter what's going on in their lives, that you will always be there to answer the phone for them. And then follow through on that promise.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all in this together. And the more isolated people feel, the less likely they are to reach out to anyone. And the more they hear a message from someone in their life that they're valuable and that the world works because they are in it, more likely they are when they're really at that place to reach out and ask for somebody to just hold their hand for a little while until it passes. And in the meantime, one more piece of homework for you. Go out into the world, live amazingly stupendous lives, and then come back and tell us all about it, please.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
With that said, we are lighting the candle, a world that works. I am Bill Corell, and you are?
Jan Jermias.
Yes, you are. Thank you very much. And everyone have an amazing week. Do something this week that's going to make your mom and dad proud, okay? Wherever they are in the universe.
That's right.
All right. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Xvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.